Moving to America is an incredible opportunity. But let's be real, it's expensive, like really expensive. And not just in the obvious ways. There are costs that hit you from every single angle. If you're considering making this move, you need to go in with eyes wide open about what it's really going to cost you. So in this video, I'm breaking down every expense that I encountered when I moved, plus the hidden costs that I wish somebody warned me about. Let's get into it. So, before you even start the process of getting a visa, you need to think about the immigration attorney costs. Get a consultation first. This is a non negotiable. Get multiple consultations first. You need to know if your move is even possible before you start spending money on it. Consultations are typically free. I wouldn't recommend anybody pay for any consultation because you can find so many free ones. Attorney fees for specifically the visa that I have, an O1, typically range from $5,000 to $15,000 depending on the complexity of your case. And to be frank, a lot of that is the fee that you're paying the attorney for putting together the work. But there are still thousands of dollars of fees that you pay the US government and an additional fee if you want to pay for premium processing. That equates to about $4,000 of fees if you want to go through premium processing. Once you get your visa, you then have this whole mountain of stuff that you have to deal with in the preparation phase. First, you've got to deal with your stuff. And by stuff, I mean all your furniture, assuming that you have furniture in whatever country you're in. Things like selling everything on Facebook Marketplace, the fire sale of trying to sell everything so that you can move to the States and get in your apartment as quickly as possible in the US means you're probably going to lose money on all the furniture that you've accumulated. And if you want to think about shipping it internationally, which I took a look at, it's going to cost you anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 depending on the volume, probably on the upper end if you are moving across the continent. And it's going to take an incredibly long time for them to send it to you, and they don't give you exact dates. It also forces you to consider what's actually worth keeping versus replacing, because in my case, and in a lot of cases, sometimes just selling everything and rebuying is actually cheaper. My recommendation to everybody would be to start this process early. It takes a lot longer than you think. Beyond the preparation costs, you then have the move itself and the travel costs associated with that. Like every type of flight, you should probably book these flights early because prices vary really wildly. So sometimes a flight to San Francisco from Toronto is $500, and sometimes it's $700 or $800, depending on when I book it. Obviously, I threw a lot of stuff out, but I wanted to make sure that I was bringing my clothes, personal items, things that I really loved. So I had to make sure that I could pack 4 checked bags. Another thing that really helped me bring down those moving costs was having somebody do a clothes run for me before my main move, which saved me luggage space for essentials and things that I needed to keep in Toronto until the last minute. So thankfully for me, I had somebody who already lived in San Francisco who was visiting Toronto. So they took down 2 giant bags for me since they had free checked bags on Delta. So that saved me a bunch of money. It saved me 2 checked bags and allowed me to bring a ton more stuff from Toronto to San Francisco because 100 pounds of stuff was already sent. The other thing that I had to consider was pet transport costs. These costs can be $100 if you're just going to bring them on the airplane with you, or thousands of dollars if they're a bigger pet and you're going to need to ship them through some other way. And this is very dependent on the airline as well as the size of your pet. Typically, because it's not a safe process shipping a dog, you have to arrive to the airport really, really early and you just don't see your dog until you get to the next country. So in Canada, they don't want to ship dogs in the winter because if they have to sit outside on the runway when it's really cold waiting to be boarded onto the plane, it could be really dangerous for them. So I made sure that when I traveled, I was traveling in May so it wasn't too hot or too cold for my dog to sit and wait around for boarding on the airplane. Now, this is one that exists whether you move within the same city or to a different country like I did. The double payment period of housing. You'll almost certainly be paying rent in 2 places simultaneously for at least 1 to 2 months. Unless you have the opportunity to go move home with your parents while you're waiting to move, your rent in one place and the other place are probably going to overlap. So you need to plan for overlap when your old lease hasn't ended, but you still need to secure housing in the United States. So this can easily mean an additional $2,000 depending on the rent costs in both locations. Another thing that really, really shocked me about moving to the United States was the massive deposits that US rentals have. So, in the States, if you have better credit, your deposit required to your landlord is a lot smaller. But if you have no US credit history, your deposit is a lot bigger. So, typically, it's common for first and last month's rent to be the deposit. But if you have no credit, sometimes they require additional upfront rent. For me, because I had no credit, I had to provide 4 months of rent upfront. If you can imagine how much that is in San Francisco, you don't even want to know what the actual number is. I definitely have a lot of money just sitting with my landlord because I had no credit. This goes with any move. You have to furnish your new place. Starting from scratch is really expensive. Buying things like a bed, couch, and kitchen basics all at the same time costs a lot of money. The average person should probably budget $2,000 to $5,000 for all their basic basic furniture and household items. Again, IKEA and Facebook Marketplace become your best friends, especially if you don't think you're going to stay in the country long term. Another hidden financial thing that a lot of people forget when they move countries is the financial admin of moving your money. Banks charge terrible exchange rates and transfer fees. So I used Wise, a service to move my money, but I still lost 1 to 3% of my money in the process. You also need to consider if you can keep bank accounts open in both countries for ongoing expenses. I still pay some expenses through my Canadian account. For example, I still pay a Canadian phone bill. So I still need to have a Canadian bank account open to pay said phone bill. And that's something that you need to consider as well. There is also the nightmare of dual country tax filing. You will probably need to file taxes in your home country and the United States for at least 1 year, maybe every single year. And for me, it was personally very important that I hired an accountant that was familiar with international tax law because I wasn't about to take on my taxes myself. I know that I certainly don't want to make a mistake with the IRS that could jeopardize me being here, and I just didn't want to deal with the Canadian government. I do not have a great relationship with the CRA. So for me, this cost me $1,000. So that list was all of the major ones. Those are changes that are probably going to cost you $1,000+. But there's some other hidden costs. Things like getting a US phone plan, paying for a social security number and other documentation, having certified copies of things, translations, notarization fees, paying for a new driver's license and car expenses, building US credit from scratch, having to get secured credit cards, for example, covering the health insurance gap. You probably will have some coverage that is available through your employer, but it will probably be a while before it kicks in. So typically, there will be a month or two when you move to the US that you won't have health insurance. You also now have to consider travel back home. And lastly, building up a new emergency fund. You probably drained a lot of your emergency fund moving, so you're going to have to start all over again. So I just went through a ton of different things that are going to rack up a pretty big bill for you when you try and move. But this is what it cost for me. And I'm going to be very clear, I moved from Toronto to San Francisco. So I moved from a very expensive city to another even more expensive city. So these costs are going to be very, very high for some people, but this is what I paid and I just want to be transparent about it. In immigration and attorney fees, I paid 13,000 US dollars. My double lease overlap, so a month where I was paying rent in Toronto and paying rent in San Francisco, I paid $2,500. My US security deposit for my new place in the US, which was 4 months of rent, I paid $4,000. To sell all my belongings or to pay for shipping, I paid $0. I sold everything on Facebook Marketplace. I really didn't ship anything. For my flights and pet transport, I paid $1,000. My flight cost me $500, and then I had to pay an additional $100 to ship my dog, and I had a bunch of check bags, which were actually just Home Depot boxes that I bubble wrapped and put a bunch of wrap on, which I didn't know you are legally allowed to check in boxes as the things that you'd like to ship. So I paid a lot extra so that I could bring stuff, but it's great. I'm really happy that I have my yoga mat that is $100 and my pillow that I really love. New furniture and my household setup cost me about $4,000. My money transfer fees to move money from Canada to the US cost me $1,000. My dual tax filing, as I said, cost me $1,000. My phone, documentation, and other miscellaneous costs cost me about $500. I also built up a new emergency buffer of $5,000. I did that very quickly when I moved to the US because I wanted to make sure that I was safe. So all in all, moving cost me about $32,000. And this doesn't include ongoing costs like paying higher rent, car expenses if you need a car, or my general adjustment to San Francisco's cost of living. So what I would recommend to everyone is make sure you have saved significantly more than you anticipate for comfort and security during your move transition period. Thanks for watching.